Ghosts, aliens, insanely hot grandmas. These are the ingredients mixed together to create the insane acid trip known as Dandadan, a manga series created by Yukinobu Tatsu and published under the big SJ themselves, which is enough of a W already in my opinion. Sign me the fuck up, man. I'm going all in. Honestly, you could have just skipped all the explanation of the plot and instead just tell me that the anime was being adapted and animated by Science Saru, which would instantly send so much dopamine to my monkey brain that I basically would have just started watching it on impulse. All jokes aside though, I've known about the existence of this manga for quite a long time now. Kinda hard not to when it's popular enough in the manga community to be put on the same level as shows like Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen when it comes to pure spectacle. I've just neglected to actually read it up until this point. My reason? Contrarianism. Look, unless you're new to this channel, then you must know by now that I tend to develop a very petty feeling of resentment towards a piece of media I haven't seen if it's constantly being shoved in my face. I don't mind checking popular shows out, but if the fans keep screaming in my ear and flooding the trending page with non-stop advertisement of it, I'm going to want to make fun of them. I realize this is not a healthy mindset to have, nor is it a very productive way to critique things, and is a character flaw that I'm slowly trying to break out of. And considering the fact that I still watch this show despite it currently being more well known than it's ever been before, I think I'm taking steps into the right direction. Good job, me. That brings in the question of what did I actually think of Dandadan as I was watching it? Well, the answer to that is pretty straightforward. It's an extremely dumb, weird, and at times pretty stupid show with incredibly loud, eccentric characters who are, for the most part, pretty simplistic and cartoonishly zany. Yet, despite this, or should I say because of this, it's also arguably one of the most entertaining shows I've seen all year, and I might be tripping when I say this, but it's also a pretty strong contender for Anime of the Year. Now, in all fairness, recency bias is definitely a strong thing, and something I'm definitely not immune to. But what exactly about this show is so good that it's managed to make someone as cranky and miserable as myself make such a bold statement?
Good question.
Dandadan follows the story of Momo Ayase, a female high school student with an oddly strange obsession with Ken Takakura, an old Japanese actor who, from the looks of it, seemed to be known for playing broody yakuzas and detectives. It's never explicitly explained why she's so obsessed with this guy besides the fact that she just finds melancholic old men to be hot. Normally I'd make some kind of unfunny joke in regards to her taste in men, but honestly, I don't think I'm in any position to judge anyone after what this show has done to my, female preferences.
Lusty grandmas!
After breaking up with her first boyfriend, she stumbles upon the side of another student getting bullied, a wimpy nerd named Ken. Last name? You guessed it, Takakura. Though she doesn't find out about that fact till the end of the episode. On a whim, she decides to step in and stop the guys who are picking on the kid. Ken, who saw this as an opportunity to try to befriend her, starts spouting off about aliens and the extraterrestrial, which understandably annoys her a fair bit.
That right there is why you got no friends!
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine.
Momo's grandma is an honest-to-God medium, so while she doesn't buy the idea of aliens, she does believe in ghosts and the supernatural, which Ken thinks is a bunch of baloney. With their beliefs now being called into question, the two decide to make a wager. Momo will go check out a UFO hotspot, while Ken has to enter a supposedly haunted tunnel, and whichever one of the two is able to find proof of their superstitious beliefs' existence will be the winner. Both of their bravados fall pretty quickly as they get to their respective locations. Momo's being in an abandoned hospital, while Ken is about, I'd say, 5 seconds away from getting jumped by some crackhead in this dark, suffocating underpass. They exchange insults and barbs to try and alleviate some of the nervousness, which slowly transitions to backstory drops, which admittedly was a little bit clumsy, I won't lie.
Whenever I went out, I had to do this ritual pose for good luck. And that's also why I believe in ghosts too.
Why are you telling him all this? You just met him a few hours ago. Several minutes pass though, and all seems to be fine. The hospital appears to be completely empty, and it seemed like the tunnel was void of any life being around. And then, she appears.
I'll let you suckle my teats, boy. If you let me gobble your
Game is game, lil bro.
Ken encounters a horrendously ugly, decrepit old lady in the tunnel and makes a run for it. And no, I'm not talking about your mom. Their phone call is cut by the sound of his screams, but before Momo can even think about heading over there, she ends up getting abducted by 3 Discord moderators.
Greetings, female human.
These guys are the Serpos, an entirely male race of aliens who have somehow made their way to Earth, and their reason for kidnapping Momo is, you guessed it, to have sex with her and extract her uterus. Oh god, that cheeky label I gave them is much more fitting than I thought. I know probing isn't anything new with aliens, but I was kinda hoping they wouldn't go down this route. Before they can commit the deed though, Ken comes bursting out of the cell phone, now being possessed by the old lady from the tunnel who turns out to be an evil spirit known as Turbo Granny, an actual Japanese urban legend by the way. A bunch of things happen all at once. Momo unlocks psychic powers, the aliens get their asses kicked, Ken loses control of himself, the entire place erupts into destruction and chaos, which ultimately ends with the UFO crashing onto a random street. Fortunately, the two are safe, but they now have a much bigger problem. Ken is still being possessed by Turbo Granny, and while Momo is able to keep her suppressed with her psychic powers, Ken's wiener is now gone. Yes, you didn't hear me wrong. Turbo Granny has stolen Ken's whole ass and balls, and he is never going to get them back as long as she is still possessing him. And from here onwards, the entire story becomes a long journey of self-discovery, friendship, and a quest to retrieve what's rightfully his. This is the story of Ken Potter and the Philosopher's Stones. Now this is undoubtedly one of the more unique plots I've seen for an anime in quite some time. You can call this show many things such as dumb, stupid, retarded, but one thing it's most definitely not is unoriginal. Whether that's a good or bad thing is entirely up to you. I've seen plenty of other anime revolving around a group of exorcists or hunters taking down demons or evil spirits, but this is the first time I've seen aliens being brought into the mix. And to the show's credit so far, it's actually done a pretty good job of incorporating Marvin the Martian with Spooky Kitaro. A really great thing I like about the villains in this series is that there is a clear distinction between the two antagonistic forces our characters have to face. Aliens are shown to be cold, calculating, and naturalistically malicious creatures who have zero emotional attachments or thoughts towards humans, at least from the ones we've seen so far. Evil spirits, on the other hand, are actually much more sympathetic in comparison, as they usually either have some level of morality or they're just a victim of really fucked up circumstances. There is a certain sense of respect present whenever the story decides to have an encounter with the undead. They're still treated as antagonists and an obstacle that the characters have to overcome, but it's abundantly clear that not all of these vengeful souls are inherently evil, and that the situation is never as black and white, as opposed to the aliens, who, as far as we've seen, just want to steal people's genitals for reproductive purposes. Halfway through the season, there's an incredible backstory drop telling the tale of a mother and daughter that's told primarily through visuals, conveying their relationship, bond, and love for each other perfectly with little to no dialogue, only making them speak in very specific and vital moments. It not only gave a certain level of depth to what we thought was just a psychotic, schizophrenic monster, but it also simultaneously gave another primary character who I thought was kind of an annoying bitch up to that point a surprisingly mature and commendable moment. Still not entirely a fan of her, but she's certainly growing on me. Stupidly endearing is probably the best way I'd describe her. Come to think of it, that's probably what I'd use to describe all the characters in one way or another, because the cast of this show is fucking fantastic, by the way. Momo surpassed almost every expectation I had from when I saw her in the teasers leading up to the anime airing. She's a hot-tempered, erratic schoolgirl who is one of the most likable female protagonists that I have seen in anime in quite some time. Before I get a bunch of weebs spamming a list of waifus in an attempt to claim that anime has plenty of great females, I'm just going to preemptively say that it takes more than just being strong and having a generic sad backstory in order for a character to be considered good. In fact, those two traits actually don't really apply too strongly to Momo. She isn't exceptionally strong to a point where enemies are nothing to her, and her backstory, although fairly sad, isn't exceptionally tragic when compared to what other anime fans have coined as good female characters.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
What makes Momo great isn't her powers or her past, but instead her productiveness as a character and overall attitude. She's confident, smart, brave, but at the same time also impulsive, unreasonably stubborn at times, and a bit shallow, which is something that even the show itself acknowledges via her two friends calling her out on that. She's not a poorly executed archetype or a very shallow mashup of tropes. She feels like an actual character with personality and agency, a factor which only becomes even more apparent through her relationship with her male counterpart. One of the biggest aspects of Momo's character is her love for traditional, hardened, masculine, and stoic men, all traits that are basically the exact opposite of Ken, despite the fact that he shares the same name as her favorite actor, hence why she calls him Okarun instead. Despite this discrepancy of her taste though, Momo finds herself in a position where she's slowly falling in love with this awkward, nerdy loser, which confuses even herself, because based on all logical perspectives, she shouldn't be into him, but But that's the funny thing about love. It almost never makes sense. As for Ken himself, who I'm going to start calling Okarun from here onwards, his character from an individual perspective is a little generic. He's very much an embodiment of the weak loser archetype who through a series of events managed to get superpowers that are way greater than himself. Personality-wise, there are a ton of characters who resemble him on a surface level that I absolutely despise, such as the main character from Bokuben, that retarded four-eyed spaz from Nagatoro, and this fucking troglodyte whose show I refuse to name or promote ever again. With that in mind, the biggest thing that makes Okarun stand out in comparison to those three is the fact that, one, he actually has a personality beyond the trope he's based on. He's a nerd, yes, and they make sure to really drive that point home by constantly having him go off on autistic tangents whenever the subject of aliens or cryptids comes up. He's so much of a loser that people in his class constantly just fuck with him for no other reason than the fact that he's just an easy target. The very first scene he's introduced in, he's getting shit thrown at him while reading a book, and this type of treatment has basically been his entire life up to this point, which resulted in his current weird obsession, cause if he can't fit in with humans, then maybe aliens will take him. Obviously that didn't pan out exactly how he was hoping it would, but it does show how he became the person that he currently is, while simultaneously addressing the issue of, hey, this probably isn't the healthiest way to deal with being a social outcast. The moments where he really shines through though is whenever he's sharing a scene with Momo. I'm not even exaggerating, these two have the best chemistry that I've seen as a duo in anime in a long time. Their energetic banter and insanely wacky interactions are genuinely really endearing to watch because it's pretty clear that they're the only ones who fully understand each other despite constantly being at each other's throats. Momo's able to talk about weird shit like the paranormal and her Ken Takakura obsession without getting judged, and Okarun is allowed to be the awkward, alien-obsessed autist that he is around her without getting wedgy. It's also nice that despite the fact that he does admire and respect her a great deal, he also doesn't hesitate to put his foot down whenever she's being, well, an annoying teenager. Their interactions never ever feel one-sided. They both gradually build a mutual respect through supporting each other through the battles with the supernatural, while at the same time still butting heads on small petty shit, which ultimately results in them learning to live with the other's respective flaws/quirks. They're not two people who are interacting purely for the sake of progressing the story or some forced unfunny gag. They feel like actual friends who love and enjoy each other's company. It just so happens that they met through really unconventional means. Now, to give my mouth a break for a second, I know this is a lot of glazing I'm doing at the moment, and because of this, I just want to clarify. I'm well aware that this is far from a perfect show, despite the truckloads of compliments I've been giving it. There's going to be a very loud portion of the fanbase that are going to claim that this is the absolute deepest piece of literature since like Schindler's List or some shit, and I'm going to preemptively say that that is not true, and anyone who claims that is retarded. This is very much still an extremely straightforward, goofy action shonen where girls will fall hopelessly in love quicker than the Flash can run, villains will just stand around to let the protagonists have arguments in the middle of battle, and characters can just get recklessly thrown around like rag dolls without dying. Dandadan is not the next Shakespeare. I assume that would have been apparent when I said that the entire plot revolved around Okarun's balls. That said, it doesn't have to be. I think it's perfectly fine for a piece of media to not be complex or super deep for it to be considered good. Dandadan is not the next step in evolution for intellectual literature, and to claim it is would be a disservice because I don't think the series is even trying to be that. It's just a simple, engaging, and fun show with a lot of heart and passion put into everything it's trying to do, and that, in my opinion, is good enough for me. Could really do without the high school nudity though. No, I will not be hearing out any disagreements to that statement. In conclusion, if your granny looks like this, please DM me immediately.
Nobody's hearts and minds filling up with things